And I want to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I see many of our partners on the call, some of our IWIC awardees. Hi, Bonnie. Hi, Vigdis. And a lot of other folks who are interested in this topic. Obviously, it's a very relevant topic, not only for New York exporters, but also for international companies seeking to do business and invest in New York State and New York City. So we want to thank our colleagues for joining us this morning to give you some tips on just how to do all of that. I will be posting in the chat room resources as we go along, mostly links, which you can follow up on later. And then we will also send the full form with all the links after the event, so that if you missed picking up one in the chat room, you'll be able to access it through the follow-up. So I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself. I'm Nancy Plager. I'm the EVP and the Secretary of the Board for the IWIC Foundation, which is an international nonprofit organization supporting the growth of successful women-owned businesses. We work with chambers of commerce and women's business groups around the world to connect with women who are looking to expand their business by going global. We've been around since 2007. We have annual conferences. Our conference in the fall is in Madrid in November. It's very exciting that we're going to be able to get back together after a 2-year hiatus of just online Zoom calls and Zoom conferences and Zoom webinars, and we all know what that's like. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my partner in crime, Susan Asadi, who is with the Global Chamber of New York. And she is going to introduce our speakers and tell you a little bit about the Global Chamber. So again, keep your eyes on the chat room for specific links. And we're going to keep you all muted. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat room. And then Susan, if we have time at the end, we'll open it up for questions then. So thanks so much again, and over to you, Susan.
Thank you very much, Nancy. So yeah, this is a Global Chamber IWIC co-hosted event. Normally I do the introductions, but Nancy was such a mastermind in helping me pull together this panel. She was on the steering committee for World Trade Week New York City, and luckily enough, we also have Carmela Mammis, who was clearly a key person in World Trade Week New York City kickoff last week. So thank you, Nancy. So Global Chamber, I'm the executive director of the New York City chapter. We have over 550 chapters around the world. Our model is basically, rather than being a chamber for a particular city, we look at being a chamber for the world. So we cross borders, countries, states, we're sort of everywhere. So our connectivity will allow you to make warm connectivity with people almost in any sector you can imagine. And we do programs like the one we're doing today, so that people will have an opportunity to get educated on what will implement their import and export businesses. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers, and at the end, I'll let you know about our next exciting meeting coming up. And the one thing I want to thank people for attending is I noticed that 2 of our key speakers from our last meeting, Ying Zhao and Hannah Tran, are on this call. So they must have found out something from last month's meeting because they're here again today. So thank you both for attending. So first up, we have Carmela Mammis, and she is the director of the New York U.S. Export Assistance Center, U.S. Commercial Service, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce and the International Trade Administration. She joined the Commercial Service in 1992 and has been working with U.S. exporters for over 30 years. She leads a team of senior international trade specialists to assist New York City and Long Island firms to succeed globally. She works with U.S. Commercial Service colleagues in over 75 countries, and her team focuses on counseling firms in high export growth industries. So if you want to connect, clearly she's going to help you do that and help you with the information that you need to actually grow your firm. So without further ado, if Cesar, if you could put up Carmela's slides, and we will now hear from Carmela. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Susan, and thanks for the introduction. I think your introduction of me really demonstrated, what I do and the international network that I'm connected to. And yeah, so the U.S. Commercial Service, as Susan mentioned, is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration, U.S. Commercial Service. I'm the director of the Commercial Service New York office, and I have colleagues who do similar things in over 100 countries, cities, I mean, and in over 75 countries. The section of the American embassies and consulates abroad are our counterpart office. And as you can see from this map, we truly have an international network helping US companies to succeed internationally through exports to create more US jobs. I'll also review later on some programs we have for foreign investors who want to establish themselves in the US. So, Cesar, if we can go to the next slide. So this we have four major categories of programs. We do export counseling, we offer market intelligence, business matchmaking, and commercial diplomacy. Our sweet spot is business matchmaking. Typically, a US company primarily needs our help to find the customers internationally, and through that process, we do export counseling to help them navigate the different issues related to exporting from A to Z, from helping them determine if they're export ready, to helping them identify which markets would be great for their US goods and services. And then as far as our commercial diplomacy, we will help US companies with any issues related to accessing projects internationally where there may be some type of unfair business practice or regulation that's impeding their success. And then also, not listed on this slide, we do have our advocacy center in DC. So for US companies bidding on a overseas foreign government project, we can advocate on their behalf to encourage the foreign government to select the US company. So next slide, please. So this slide is a really great example of how we bring our US clients through the process. We help assess their export readiness, identify key markets, determine sales potential, and then help them implement their export plan. Next slide, please. Yeah, so why export matters. More than 96% of the world's purchasing power is outside the US, and companies that export grow faster and are 8.5% less likely to go out of business. And US products are still seen as very innovative, creating cutting edge, as well as US companies are considered to be more flexible and prepared to modify products and services. US is known for high quality, durable and safe products, strive to have positive brand values and awareness. They have excellent reputation for after sales service and warranty coverage, creative marketing materials, easy to reach and communicate with, and US companies are seen to be honest and ethical in their business dealings. So next slide, please. So this graph shows what we consider to be key to success. US companies who have a unique product or service and are already successful in selling in the US market have higher potential for successful exports. Companies need to make sure they have management commitment, capacity to handle export sales, and the capital to do so. They also need to ensure that their process for export payments are in place, and there's other federal agencies that can work together with me, including the Export-Import Bank of the United States and the Small Business Administration. They have trade finance programs to help U.S. exporters. And U.S. companies need to ensure that their IP is protected. For example, if they've never exported before, they may wish to export to countries that have good IP protection. And you know, all U.S. companies need to comply with U.S. export regulations. And most products don't require an export license, but every U.S. company needs to ensure that they have a export compliance plan in place. And yeah, next slide, please. Yes, so these are some highlights of how to develop an effective export plan. Confirm if an export license is needed, identify the target markets, look at customer profiles, and identify the countries that contain the customer profiles that would be best suited for their product or service. They also need to look for, the competition in farm markets as well as the cultural issues. And determining their export product sales will be different than how they price their US sales. There's things to consider, such as, if they're going to, they have to look at any duties or taxes. In some cases, they're more successful in exporting to the free trade agreement countries. So many of these things are incorporated into their export plan, and it is a moving document. So although a company might start off targeting specific countries at the beginning of their fiscal year, that may change. So the one bit of advice, it's not a static document. The export plan is meant to be a constantly evolving plan. And of course, companies should have their regular business plan in place before they decide to move to exporting. Next slide, please. So an important code when US companies are doing their market research, as well as identifying the duties and taxes in international markets, is the harmonized code number. This is a universal code for worldwide standards. It's a 6-digit level code, but the US has a 10-digit code. And it's a great market research tool for companies to see which countries are importing their US product. The Census Bureau maintains statistics. And so a US company is able to see which countries are importing that US product. And it's very important for shipping documents such as the shipper's export declaration. So it's very important for US companies to know their code, as well as other companies. As I said, this is a worldwide standard. Next slide, please. So these are some really important market research links that are free. And I'm more than happy to make this presentation available to all that have joined. But the best free source of information is via our trade.gov website. And here are some other resources. If you're thinking about exporting, but you're not sure what country to export to, we have some great industry research reports. Also, if you're from a particular country and you're thinking about developing an export company, the country commercial guides are excellent resources because it lists the US government's perspective on what are the high potential products and services for US companies to export to that country. And then of course, there's other tools listed here, the tariff lookup as well. Again, it's really important before a company exports their product to identify what the duties and taxes might be, because it may be that they'll just be too high in a particular country and it may not be a good export market for a US company. Next slide, please. So yeah, for those of you who are not US companies seeking to export, but interested in investing in the United States, we have our Select USA program. There's going to be a major conference next month in Washington, DC area. And yeah, we work very closely with the US states and cities to help promote and foster investments in the US. Ultimately, the state contacts will be the best source of resource if if a company, international company, has a particular interest in New York State, for example. Next slide, please. So these are some of the benefits of FDI to the U.S. economy, and I think some of this information was provided by my colleague in a future presentation. But yeah, so the United States is basically home to more foreign direct investment than anywhere else in the world. Next slide, please. So these are some of the services we offer for companies wishing to, invest in the U.S. So, and then we also have services for the EDOs, meaning New York State Empire State Development. And if anyone has any particular questions on these services or would like to be connected with my colleague in the Select USA office, I'd be happy to send that to you after the presentation. But here's my email address. If you're not based in New York State, and you're a US company, you can go to www.trade.gov/contact us to find your local US Export Assistance Center. So yeah, so that was just a very quick overview of our programs and services. But we're the lead export promotion agency of the federal government. We're basically working with companies as solution providers. If we don't have the answer, we have lots of partners like Global Chamber and IWEC. So we really are, in many cases, a great resource to help US companies identify and get involved with exporting. And also, like I said, we're a really great resource for international companies wishing to invest in the US. So now I'm open for questions.
Okay, that's fabulous, Carmela. I'm going to ask you, each one of the speakers, a couple of questions after they speak, and at the end we can have it open up for other ones to ask. Our experts, some whatever their queries are. So do you think you could provide an example of how you work with a US company to enter new markets? And is there a cost for a company to get involved?
Yes, that's really great. That's an excellent question. I'll give an example of a company we recently helped to export to Singapore. It's a company that manufactures disinfectants and other personal protective equipment. They have over 13 years of exporting, and they have sold to some countries. They came to us. They're headquartered in New York, but they manufacture in a couple of other US states. And their product has various applications in hospitals, buildings, public transportation, schools. So they reach out to us to discuss their interest in expanding to Southeast Asia. They were particularly interested in finding a reputable distributor in Singapore. So in that situation, we had them complete a company questionnaire, and then we contacted our colleagues at the USMC in Singapore. We quickly identified that they have potential, and we conducted an initial market check for them to gauge the next steps and to confirm how receptive the Singaporean market would be for them. And as a result, it was very successful. We were able to provide export insights and help them identify a reputable distributor. And yeah, they signed a distributor agreement. So this is a very new, partnership, and we're hoping, to help them, expand in other markets. And many of our services don't have fees. Our counseling is completely free. We have lots of market research information available through trade.gov, as well as other databases we subscribe to that we utilize to help counsel US companies on particular markets. When it comes to a customized service, for example, in this case, helping the company in New York find a reputable distributor in Singapore, we do charge minimal fees, participation fees. And for that particular service, I believe we have a couple of different scales. Our main focus is small to medium-sized companies. So we have one fee for small companies and a different fee for large companies. But the international market check I described earlier was $350. So it's very low cost participation fee. Again, for a larger company, it would be, higher than that. But many of our companies don't use fee-based services. We help them export via our counseling and market research as well. So we're open to all US businesses. We do have a 51% US content requirement because we are a US federal agency. So, and we help work with companies to identify if they do meet that requirement, because sometimes they import components. And again, we also work with service exporters as well. For example, we help recruit foreign students to study in the US. That's an export of a service. Or tourism, we help promote tourism to the US. That's an export of a service, because the tourists and students who come here, they they go to shows, they go to restaurants, they pay tuition. So that's all considered an export of a service. And then we had a recent win that we written impact narrative that we actually presented at World Trade Week, NYC's kickoff event on May 5th. New York Roadrunners, we provided a service to them and helped them work through some requirements of getting international travelers here for the marathon and the half marathon in New York City. So we presented them with an export achievement certificate last Thursday. So that just kind of gives a range of how we can work with a product exporter and an idea of the service exporters who we work with as well. But again, we also help foreign buyers match up with US companies as well.
A quick question from one of our attendees, and then we're going to move on to Patricia. Is it the same fees for European companies to come to the US?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
He asked, Tony Dudzak from Luxembourg asked, is it the same fees for European companies to come to the US?
Well, we don't work with foreign companies with these matchmaking services. So our main mission is to help US companies export, but we have colleagues overseas that work with potential buyers. And then pre-pandemic, and of course this will improve over time, we do recruit foreign buyer delegations to US trade shows. We do introduce international distributors to US companies exhibiting at foreign trade shows. So in some cases, if there's an international company that invests in the US and they have a facility and they're making a product, they may qualify to use our services as a US company. Okay. So yeah, there are cases where a international company that invests and has a US company in the US, they may qualify for our export assistance programs.
Okay.
I don't know
okay.
if that answers the question.
Well, for now it does. And if Tony needs
Okay.
to communicate with you on the side, we'll set
All
that
right.
up. I wish we had more time because this is fabulous. Okay. All right. We'll talk more at the end. Our next speaker is Patricia Bayley, and she's the VP of Digital and New Media Development at Empire State Development. She works closely with technology and media companies, establishing and expanding in New York and across the state. She's worked with the state's motion picture development team, partnering with major studios and stakeholders to help increase diversity within the state's film and TV industry. So Patricia, do you want to share your screen and give us your presentation? We're ready to hear you.
We'll
Thank
definitely
you.
go ahead and do that. Yeah. So let me go ahead and get everything started here. All right. How are we looking? Do you see a full screen there?
Beautiful.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Thank you, Susan. So as Susan said, my name is Patricia Bayley. I work with Empire State Development as a VP of Digital New Media, and also work in part with the film office. And I'll go into greater detail on what that really means later on the presentation. But just a little bit of background on Empire State Development. We are the economic development arm of the state of New York. So we are a government agency, and our real main focus is to attract investment and new business into New York State. How do we do that? We have a few tools and focus areas that we look towards. We help with financial incentives. We do assist with real estate development. There is some marketing assistance, and also there is small business services. So what these services would look like, really kind of high level, quick overview. First off, the financial incentives. We have the Excelsior Jobs Program. This is probably something that I can talk most on because I am one of the people who does originate these programs for companies looking to make investments in New York State. There's 4 kind of applicable areas for people who are interested in looking at the Excelsior tax credit. We have a jobs-based tax credit. We also have an investment-based tax credit, an R&D tax credit, and then also a property tax credit. These are refundable tax credits. What's really great about them is that you apply at any time. There's no deadline, and you usually get a decision within 6 to 8 weeks. So that does help with the long-term planning for a lot of companies. Because it is a tax credit, you're not going to see the money up front. It will come over the span of 10 years based on the commitment you've had on either the jobs created or investment or whatnot. These are also discretionary tax credits, so they are based on many factors and the type of investment that you're doing, either the jobs you're creating, the type of capital investment you're making, and what part of the state you're making this in. So this is something that, just to give you an idea that it exists. And if you do have further questions and think you might be eligible, we have a pretty extensive outline online about eligibility, and then you can go ahead and get further information online. And be connected with the correct originator. Grants are something else that we also do assist with. They are a bit more onerous in terms of applying, but if you are doing any major capital investment, job creation, or job retention, that is, you're a company that's already in New York State but at risk of leaving, we would, build that into any sort of incentive package. Generally, they do come with Excelsior tax credits, but every situation is different. So we always kind of look at it in a case-by-case scenario. We also do offer operational support. This comes in multiple different programs. We have a business mentor program. It's generally for more smaller businesses. Also entrepreneurship assistance program. Once again, someone who's kind of starting out and trying to get some more help as they are trying to find the resources to help get their businesses up and going. Procurement assistant programs. This is also a way to help you access procurement opportunities with the state of New York, and also introductions to regional offices. I'll show you a map a bit later about the different regions within the state, but we are divided within different locations throughout the state. And so we have offices specific to that, but we also have people who are agnostic to the regions and more industry focused. So, introductions to the right resources, either location or industry. We have, a team that can help you with that. We also have centers of excellences, which are usually linked to universities. So they help with the commercialization of technologies coming out of universities. And when you partner with one of these centers of excellence, is a great way to develop pipeline and also technology. NISTAR is kind of a great way of segueing from the centers of excellence. They are the ones who, NISTAR stands for, is ESD's Division of Science, Technology, and Innovation. They are the ones who lead on the centers of excellence. Like I said, they are emphasizing the link between universities and commercialization of these technologies coming out of the universities. There's also special grants when you work and partner with these universities in those locations. And once again, these are discretionary sort of situations where case by case, if this is something that you think is a good opportunity for you to work with one of these centers of excellence and within NISTAR, we can get you kind of that conversation going. And venture capital investment funds. So the state does make venture capital investments in new technologies or businesses trying to find a funding gap. We obviously, as the state, are looking not only for a return on the investment, but we're also looking for a way for us to help with maybe underserved communities, people who maybe are generally overlooked for venture capital funding. These are also, I should point out, we are never the lead investors. We usually are, investors later on down the line. So you often will need to have kind of already some sort of investment starting to go, and then will then come in later with, with backup funding. Like I said, this is, these are kind of a case-by-case scenario. We do kind of look for opportunities that, where I think most people wouldn't be finding it easier to find the capital, but are still an innovative company, obviously New York City based or planning to be New York City based, or sorry, New York State based. So this is not the, my wheelhouse, but definitely, the team, if you think you are eligible or would be interested for this, I could always, put you in contact with the venture capital investment team for further information or evaluation of your scenario. Kind of going a bit more onto what the regions look like in New York State. We have 10 diverse regions, all with, separate focuses on key strengths. Just kind of a quick overview in terms of like an industry strength that encapsulates different regions of the state. Digital game development, which is something that I'm focusing on right now. Beyond New York City, it actually has a strength as well in the capital region and in central New York. So this is kind of the benefit of having an agency that not only looks with regional focus, but also an industry focus. So I have colleagues based in all of these 10 different regions in the regional offices. And the regional offices, while they are part of ESD, they also do kind of have their own autonomy in terms of grants and tax credits. So not only talking to me, who's kind of the industry expert, if you can focus on a different region where you do want to expand, we can always introduce you to the right offices, which can then further help you with your plans. And like I said, I have a team of industry experts. So I work in the software digital new media, and also I work with the television and film team, which is another department within itself. But I have colleagues that, once again, we're all location agnostic, but we work throughout, these different, industries, from agribusiness to chip technology, tourism, and financial services. So we run the gamut. Generally, it's best to kind of reach out to us with to the ESD website, and then we have people who actually go ahead and narrow down who the best introductions would be, and then you go from there with the conversations. So that ends my presentation. Here is more information on us. it's always kind of hard to present this because I think generally everybody's might be coming from different backgrounds in terms of industry and locations that they're looking at. So it's always best to start out with kind of a general presentation, then we can always kind of filter down from there. So if you have any questions, I'm open to anything. Hopefully I can help.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Patricia, and then at the end, we'll have time for other people to ask questions because I want to make sure we have enough time, to get all the presentations done, and then we'll come back to more questions. Just one quick question on the Excelsior Jobs Tax Credit. What's the best stage for a company to be at before they consider pursuing something like that?
Right. No, that's really good for you to ask. So with Excelsior, I would say you should be approaching us when you're about 6 months out of deciding or signing a lease of where you want to be. So if you're a business considering expanding in New York State, but you're also considering expanding in maybe California or maybe in your home country of maybe Denmark. So you're weighing maybe these 3 options and you're trying to put together kind of like a strategic kind of plan that you might want to present to your superiors. I would say approach us when you're about 6 months out of finalizing that decision, definitely well before you sign a lease. And we can get something to you within 2 months that you can then put together in kind of a long-term plan and review the financial implications of our tax incentives versus, operating in another state.
And just briefly, again, I know we don't have a lot of time here, but if somebody would want to apply for a grant, and I know all those details are online, what stage should they be at for that?
For a grant, I would say much longer term, especially if you're doing the REDC grant program. So there is a one-stop application for the regional team grants. So you would have to know where in the region that you're requesting the grant. But I would say that if you are looking for, a major investment, looking for, a grant via the REDC, you would need about 18 months before you need that cash, because it takes that long for the application to go through and then to be awarded and then for you to actually receive the funds.
Excellent. I mean, this really should be a 2-hour meeting, but we're going to move on to Naomi and then we're going to come back for questions from the participants. So, start thinking about your questions for everybody. So our third speaker is Naomi Fujiki, and she's the VP and Chief of Staff Partnerships at New York City Economic Development Corporation. This is a mission-driven nonprofit organization that works with and for communities across New York City to strengthen neighborhoods and create good jobs. And she oversees a team that collaborates with international and domestic partners to bring businesses, jobs, and opportunities to New York City. So Naomi, thank you so much for joining and being patient for your presentation. And I see you have your presentation up, so let's go.
Thank you, Susan. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Great.
We can hear you and see your presentation.
Great. So thank you so much for the introduction. I'm Naomi Fujiki, Vice President of Strategic and International Partnerships at New York City's Economic Development Corporation, or EDC for short. So I'm really happy to be speaking with you all today and talk a little bit about who my agency is, paint a little bit of a picture about why you should invest in New York City, and support and resources that we have for businesses expanding here. So EDC is a mission-driven nonprofit organization that creates shared prosperity across New York City. We do this by building strong neighborhoods and creating good jobs. To achieve our goals, we developed city-owned real estate assets. So we have 6 million square meters or 66 million square feet of real estate assets across the 5 boroughs. And we really use those to transform underutilized properties into projects that create quality jobs and promote livable communities. We also do a lot to invest in growing industries and help companies start and grow in New York City. So I'll focus mainly on this today. But first, I just want to tell you a little bit about why you should invest here. So most people think of New York, they think of Manhattan. But New York City has 5 boroughs, each with their own wealth of opportunities. So starting from the top, we have the Bronx, which is home to Yankee Stadium and the New York Botanical Gardens. It has a population of 1.5 million people, which is roughly the same size as Philadelphia. It's also the state's fastest growing county. Brooklyn is the city's most populous borough with 2.6 million people. If it was its own city, it would be the 4th largest in the US. And Manhattan is home to the world's largest central business district, the biggest stock exchange, and the largest office market in the nation. Queens has a population of 2.25 million, which is the size of Houston, Texas. It also has 2 of New York City metropolitan area's major airports, JFK and LaGuardia. And it's the most diverse county in the whole world with 138 languages spoken. And last but not least, we have Staten Island, which is a strong working waterfront on its North Shore. And its industries include things like healthcare, maritime, wholesale, retail. It's also the site of a new Amazon warehousing facility. So New York also has incredible talent. We're the largest city in the US with over 8 million residents, and we have the nation's largest labor force at over 4 million workers. 3.2 million of us have bachelor's degree or higher, which is more than Los Angeles, San Francisco, Philadelphia, DC, and Boston all combined. On top of that, we have over 100 institutions of higher education with top programs in business, fashion, design, engineering, law, medicine, etc. We're also a huge market with the nation's biggest consumer base of 20 million people. We have a gross metropolitan product of 1.66 trillion, which is larger than the entire gross state product of Texas. If we were a country, our economy would be the 10th largest in the world, bigger than Canada and Russia. We also have over 200,000 small to medium businesses and headquarters of more than 47 Fortune 500 companies. We're really the ultimate testing ground with a diverse, expansive population that will allow you to test your ideas at scale with an audience that represents the world. We're also defined by diversity. 37% of our population is born abroad, and immigrants represent 47% of our workforce. In the streets of New York, you can hear 800 languages being spoken on any given day. And this diversity is really a priceless asset for any business. And quickly, just taking a step back, it's clear that New York has always reinvented itself and been on the cutting edge of innovation. We began as a shipping and trading hub in the 17th and 18th centuries. In the 19th century, we were one of the most important manufacturing hubs in the country. And by the late 20th century, we had evolved once again into a service economy synonymous with Wall Street, the New York Stock Exchange, and our prestigious legal, media, and real estate industries. Resiliency is really in our DNA. Every time people counted New York City out with declarations that the best days of the city were behind us, such as after 9/11 or the fiscal crisis, people were wrong. In fact, the down moments have always been the best time to invest here because we've always come back stronger than we have before. So today we remain a global leader in finance, healthcare, real estate, media, manufacturing, and IT, but we're also so much more than that. We're really a thriving interconnected ecosystem of innovation with the ingredients for success across every sector. And right now, I'm just going to highlight 3 sectors that we're investing in now to showcase some of the opportunities that folks have, beyond finance, beyond media that you typically think of when you think of New York City. So those are tech, life sciences, and the green economy. So here's some statistics about our tech economy. We have all of the major tech companies here, like Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon. Most of them are actually been doubling down on their real estate investments in New York during the pandemic. We're also one of the world's largest startup ecosystems, second only to the Bay Area, with over 9,000 startups. We have a $147 billion startup ecosystem valuation, 100 plus tech incubators, and a huge pool of talent. For life sciences, this is a huge industry that my agency is investing in. We're leading the city's $1 billion investment into this industry, but we already have a lot of advantages here. We have the nation's largest healthcare network with 9 medical centers, 50 hospitals, 370 healthcare centers. We also have abundant space for commercial labs, and that's one thing that my agency has been investing in, is expanding space as we speak. We have over $2 billion in annual NIH awards and a huge biotech workforce. And lastly, we're really driving initiatives to make New York City a leader in decarbonizing the urban built environment. So we're investing in sustainable infrastructure and innovation in several industries within the green economy, including buildings, energy, and transportation. Notably, New York really leads the US in climate legislation, which creates huge opportunities for innovation and business. So New York, for example, is spending $4 billion on retrofitting our real estate assets through 2030, and the private sector is spending an additional 20 to 30 billion. This is a huge, huge opportunity. And we have already 850,000 workers in this industry, and we're training more for new industries such as offshore wind. So at EDC, one of our goals is to really ensure New York City remains a global business destination. And we strive to do that in several ways, including by helping medium to large businesses expand here. So our agency prioritizes projects that bring a meaningful number of good paying jobs to New York City, grow some of the key industries I just mentioned, and positively impacts the city. So our business development team will provide one-to-one concierge support for businesses bringing 50 jobs or more to the city. And so we do this in several ways outlined on this slide. So first, we can help identify neighborhoods and private sites for office locations. We can also see if any of our own city assets matches a company's need. In terms of financial solutions, there's over 50 incentives at the city, state, and federal levels that apply to New York City. So we help to simplify this process by packaging the applicable incentives. We also provide workforce consultation to help companies build their recruiting pipeline and connect folks to our industry program partners. We also leverage city procurements to encourage companies to move to New York City and apply for those. And for companies that are doing location analysis, we have a team of economists on staff that can provide wayfindings to help paint the economic picture of why New York City might be the best fit. We can connect folks to over 100 plus academic institutions to help you explore R&D and talent pipelines. We're also here to connect you with ecosystem players and make sure you're really set up and plugged into the right groups. And of course, once you're here, we can connect you to our wonderful colleagues on our call to explore trade and investment opportunities when you're ready to expand further. So again, we really focus on medium to large businesses making a significant investment in New York. But for those that might not qualify, we have a list of resources on our website, including a business resource guide and a business incentives guide. There's also many additional resources at the city and state level. So the New York City Department of Small Business Services, they work with businesses of any size, but ones that don't meet our thresholds as well. And they'll really help you figure out the licensing, legal procedures, everything that you need to know to set up shop in New York. And then for the international folks on this call, we have the Mayor's Office for International Affairs, which will really help to connect you to the right agencies and opportunities in New York City. And then of course, there's lots of statewide resources that were just mentioned and just outlined a few of them here. And so there's one message I can leave you with. It's that New York City is open for business and the time to invest is now. Thank you so much.
That's fabulous, Naomi. I mean, you all are terrific. You are probably one of the best PR people I've heard for New York in a long time. That was excellent. You got me excited again. So can you just give me an example of a company that you've worked with to expand to New York?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually have one slide on it as well. So Curve is an example of a company we worked with in 2020. It's a London-based fintech firm. They were planning expansion to the US and they were considering Charlotte, Austin, and New York City. So what we did is we put together a custom proposal for them that really convinced them to look at downtown Brooklyn. They thought that other places would have been cheaper. They thought of New York City as Manhattan and thought they were going to be priced out. But we were able to set them up with a local broker on the ground, work with some of our neighborhood organizations as well to really showcase what downtown Brooklyn had to offer. And so in February 2020, they announced that they were moving to New York City and bringing 185 jobs here. And so this was really a result of the efforts that our business development team did to do this one-to-one concierge support to help them expand.
Okay, that's great. All right, we're going to go to one question for you that I just saw from Christine Pomerantz. How does your organization implement academic integration? Do you work in that area at all?
Yeah, so we work with the academic institutions a lot. If for a lot of our industry programs, for example, we are partnered with CUNY, with Cornell Tech, with Columbia, NYU, all the universities here, really thinking about how to build the best R&D as well as talent pipelines. And then for companies coming here, we will definitely provide introductions to academic institutions depending on what the need is.
Okay, well, there's somebody on the call. I know you mentioned CUNY, but Ying Zhao works with the Tech Incubator. You two should definitely connect. Let's see. Who else has questions? If you have any questions, actually at this point, you can unmute your mic and, if you have a question for Carmela, for Patricia, let's see who has questions now.
I do have a question. We used to partner with EDC Into NYC program. I wonder if you still know about the status of that program.
Yeah, that was my boss, Justin Kramer, was one of the sort of main people that were behind that program. That program is sort of on pause with just mayoral transition. We're still figuring that out. And for those in the call, Into NYC was a program where entrepreneurs from abroad could get easier access to visas if they were able to locate on a university campus in New York City.
Yeah. Any similar programs being considered?
So right now we haven't, this was something that we were exploring more when it was a bit more difficult to get visas. We found that under the new federal administration, it's been a bit easier. So we haven't, those conversations haven't come up recently. But there's also the NISTAR programs that Patricia mentioned at the state level that different, but similar to locating on a university campus.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question for, say, Carmela or Patricia? Or for all the speakers? Okay, well, if no one jumps in, I have another question. Is there sort of an intersect between these three organizations? Maybe Carmela and you, or Patricia, you can address this. What would you say the intersection is between the three organizations that presented today?
Yes, no, I'd be happy to start. So I work very closely with Naomi and Patricia's organization, specifically Global New York Division of Empire State Development at New York State. And yeah, we work hand in hand with Global New York. We even do a joint strategic plan every year. So in the support of U.S. exporters, we work very closely together. Our services complement each other. They manage the STEP program, which is a grant program funded by the U.S. federal government. And so we work very closely with our programs and even do joint educational programs and refer clients to each other. So that's how we work with Global New York, and NYC, very similar. And of course, with Empire State Development, we work very closely with Patricia's colleague covering foreign direct investment as well. And then with Naomi, the same, activity. We are constantly, making referrals to each other, and been working with both organizations quite extensively for many, many years. So our services complement each other. And I think, yeah, we just refer appropriately where the U.S. exporter or international foreign investor, will get the best support or joint support. So it's all very complementary.
Okay.
It's basically federal, state, and city affiliated organization.
Cool. All right, I'm going to jump to another question that we have in the queue here. Could you explain the New York road runners and how they required help with export? Their product is race organizing. And so Caroline from New York City, Owit, says she's confused about that. Who wants to answer that?
Well, no, that's our client. That's actually a tourism client with my colleague in New York City. So Carolyn, I can get all the full details for you, and we could correspond offline. But yeah, there were some requirements, that during the restrictions with COVID. And so it was related to certain types of requirements for international visitors to the city of New York. So that's kind of the gist of it. We were able to help navigate that and get the runners, help get the runners here.
Okay, that's great. Well, I know we're at that hour. I just want to mention one thing and two things actually, and then I'm going to hand it back to Nancy to close. If you like what you heard today, please join us on June 9th at 11 a.m. Eastern. It's going to be our first hybrid meeting. We're going to have in-person component in Herald Square area at a company called Corpay. They're one of our advisory board members. So our focus is going to be on looking at this whole bottleneck that has occurred in supply chain. Actually, the head of the New Jersey port spoke for Carmela's for the World Trade Week New York City event last week, but we're going to have people from 4 ports around the country, East Coast ports including. We'll have somebody again from New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Jacksonville, and Maryland. So if supply chain is an issue important to you, I just put in the chat the registration link for that, and only the first 15 will be able to be in person. The rest will be online. And I do want to thank Monica Varis. I apologize, I didn't thank her earlier. She was very early on helping Nancy and I come up with this idea. So thank you, Monica, very much for your support in this idea. And Nancy, I'm handing it back to you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Nancy.
Nancy? Hello? She's probably busy putting in all the, here we go, Nancy. Go ahead. I can't hear you. We can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, sorry, my speaker went off. I didn't realize that. Thank you. So thank you, Susan and Naomi, Carmela, and Patricia. Very informative. We really appreciate your input. And I know we're all here to help not only New York companies, but also those from abroad approach the states and New York in particular. So all of this is very great information. And I've posted lots of things in the chat room. And also we are going to send you a document that lists all of those posts because I know you weren't able to copy them all. Excuse me. We thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you've come away with some tips and ideas about how to further your business in the city. And thanks for all the resources that you provided us, ladies. And we hope that you will join us, and everyone should follow us on our social media for other events. As Susan said, she has an event coming up. She has lots of events every month. And as I mentioned, our conference is in November. We'd love to have you join us in Madrid. So keep your eyes open, join all our social media posts, and thank you all very much. And again, we will send you this document with all the links and information. And if there's anything you want to ask further or occurs to you in the next day or so, please feel free to send Susan or I an email, and we'll make sure we get it to one of our constituents here and get you some answers. So thank you very much. Enjoy your day. Stay safe. Be well.